Would you ask Mr. Daffarn to come back in, please? Thank you. Right, Mr. Daffarn, ready to carry on?
Indeed.
Good, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Daffarn, we discussed earlier this morning a meeting you had at the Tower with Ben Dewis in the March of 2014. Did you know that at that stage the LFE was conducting an investigation or inspection of the Tower?
I didn't know that they were there on an official visit,
right.
But I seem to recollect there was a number of firefighters inspecting them.
I see. Did he or any other firefighter during that meeting tell you that the LFB had concerns about whether the AOV, the smoke vent system in the tower, was working properly or not?
No. No.
Did you know that only a few days later, on the 24th of March 2014, the LFB had cause to issue a deficiency notice to the TMO in respect of fire safety matters at Grenfell Tower?
No, I didn't know that.
Can I just ask you some questions about recognition of Grenfell Action Group? Can I ask you to go, please, to IWS 402154? Now, this is an email dated the 12th of June 2012. And if we go to page 9 in this email run, it's a 10-page email run. We need to look at page 9. We can see that you send Margarita Mansi of RBKC an email on the 2nd of August, copied to various people, including, just note, Kylie Christensen, Janet, Councillor Blakeman, and Janet Edwards at the TMO. Dear Margarita, I've sent you today by first-class post an application from the Grenfell Action Group to be added to the RBKC's Tenants and Residents Associations database. Thank you for accepting this application, and please would you be kind enough to notify the Grenfell Action Group once our application has been officially registered. And then if you go up the email run to page 8. She comes back to you after some intervening correspondence on the 6th of September 2012 and says, the foot of page 8, thank you for continuing to share with me the progress on this situation, much appreciated. I cannot remember where we left moving forward on your constitution stroke meeting up. Thursday morning and Friday any time are both good for me next week if you'd like a further catch-up, or I can provide any comments by email. Hope you're enjoying the process of starting to formally recruit and sign up membership! Exclamation mark. In case you haven't seen, as confirmation that you're on the Council's database, GAG is listed on our public online listing and should help your Google rank to come up as our RBKC site is usually indexed as well. Usually indexed well. In the meantime, while you build your blog traffic. Best wishes, Kylie. It looks from that as if GAG was actually added to RBKC's database as a residents association. Is that right?
That is correct. Largely thanks to Kylie Christensen.
Right. I see. So, in fact, GAG did become a formally recognised residents' association so far as RBKC was concerned.
Yeah.
Right.
And that enabled us to be invited to the decamp policy consultation and stuff like that. So.
Now, I want to ask you about fire exits. Can I show you a GAG blog post from August 2014? TMO 00831-259. This is a blog dated 26th of August 2014, and it's headed, Is Grenfell Tower a fire trap? And you can see a big picture in red and orange which says fire trap. And then next to that on the right, it says, from Grenfell Action Group to Ben Dewis, londonfire.gov.uk, subject, re Grenfell Tower, ongoing concerns, Wednesday, 20th of August, 2014. And then you set out the text of an email there. And it has at the bottom Grenfell Action Group as the signatory. The first question I have is, did you write the email to Ben Dewis that you're then cutting and pasting into the blog here?
So I think from the top right-hand corner where I've got Grenfell Action Group, I think probably what I've done is that would have had my original private email address. Right. So I've taken that out and put the Grenfell Action Group, because I don't think the Grenfell Action Group actually had an email account like that. So, but I obviously wouldn't want to share my private email address.
No,
so from the top right-hand corner that I can see.
Yes, I see. Now, had you received a response from Mr. Dewis to your 20th of August email before you posted this on the 26th of August?
If I'm honest, I can't remember.
No.
Unless you've got.
We haven't seen one.
So if you haven't seen it, I would suspect that I didn't get a response.
Right. Had you chased Mr. Dewis for a response before you posted it?
I don't think so. Probably
Right.
not.
I mean, is there a reason why you didn't wait for a response from Ben Dewis before posting this blog?
I would suggest because we just wanted to get this
Right.
as a document out there.
Looking at the detail, it says, I'm very sorry to trouble you again. And then it goes on, a number of residents of Grenfell Tower are very concerned at the fact that the new improvement works to Grenfell Tower have turned our building into a fire trap. There is only one entry and exit to the tower block itself, and in the event of a fire, the LFB could only gain access to the entrance to the building by climbing 4 flights of narrow stairs. On top of this, the fire escape exit on the walkway level has now been sealed. And then in bold, residents of Grenfell Tower do not have any confidence that our building has been satisfactorily assessed to cope with the new improvement works, and we are seeking a meeting with the Chief Fire Officer from Kensington Fire Station so that these concerns can be addressed. Now, looking at the second and the third paragraphs of this email reflected in this blog, so leaving aside the point about the walkway level exit, what was it specifically about the refurbishment that, as you put it, turned the building into a fire trap? Right.
Well, aside from the issue of access by fire appliances along Grenfell Road, the most concerning aspect, and I think what we were probably most referring to here, was so once the work started and the base of the tower there was no access. Pedestrian, tenant access in through the base. Every tenant had to enter through the walkway, and the only way you could get to the walkway was either through a ramp from Latimer Road Tube Station, which was probably 500 yards away, or up, and there's another blog called Stairs of Shame, up these 4 very narrow flights of stairs. And just for all the reasons I've explained to you previously about concerns about mass evacuation or just fire in general, I could not believe at the time that had been assessed, and to this day, it's still not of all the things, but there are many things. But that is one thing that I can never. So for the whole of the period of the regeneration works, while the ground floor of Grenfell was closed, the only way that the emergency services would have been able to access Grenfell Tower was up this narrow 4 flights through one staircase, or to come up from Ladbroke Grove Tube up the ramp. That was what my concern was, and I believe that's what ended up in Councillor Blakeman's matrix at the end. It didn't feel safe.
What made you put a prominent graphic with the word fire trap in those garish colours there on the blog?
Well, in fact, as I explained a little bit earlier, Francis O'Connor was normally responsible for the graphics, but look, it felt like an entirely appropriate banner heading or graphic.
Right.
I mean, it would, sorry to interrupt you.
No. Please continue.
The closure of the ground floor had turned the Grenfell Tower into a fire trap.
Yes. I see. When did you first become aware that the fire escape exit on the walkway level would be closed?
So it's a little bit confusing, and so once the improvement works had closed off the ground floor level, there was the only exit from Grenfell Tower was through the walkway.
Yes.
And there's another blog we've got of pictures of rubbish and stuff in that hallway, and then out onto the walkway and then down these stairs. But previously there had been another fire exit at the north side of Grenfell Tower that had been allowed to fall into disrepair and was removed as part of the calc works. So I'm assuming here, where are we now?
This is August 14.
So we're like 2 months into the Grenfell Tower work starting. I just in my mind I can't quite. Is that when they would have closed off the downstairs? If it was, then I most definitely was referring to the fire escape that traditionally came at the end of the emergency stairs on the walkway level. That would then take you out onto the mezzanine and. Sorry.
So I mean, just in terms of chronology, I think we can date this, or your concern about this, to the time when the enabling works started by Ryden on site, which is late summer 2014.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. It might be more difficult for me to, but those were the kind of chronological concerns I had. The more historic concern about the fire escape at the back of Grenfell Tower on the mezzanine, but then the more major concern about once the ground floor was closed down, that the only exit was out through the lifts. If you happen to go down to the ground floor, the old thing, the lift would open and there was just it was like boarded up. And then, so you had to go back up to the walkway level and then come out on the walkway. Right. So that was the only exit.
I follow. Now, did you discuss the concerns that you've articulated in this blog here, or in your email to Mr. Dewis, with anyone from the TMO at the time?
So, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think we were aware that the TMO were reading our blog. For us, this was signed to them that they needed to do something about what our concerns were. I do know that, we were raising it with Councillor Blakeman, although that did appear, as you pointed out earlier, a couple of years later in the Matrix rather than right now. I think there's another blog called The Stairs of Shame. That would be another. Do you have that available?
I do not, to answer your question.
Okay.
But, were you a blogger on that blog?
Stairs of Shame?
Yes.
In the same way that all blogs were created. But right. In fact, on that one, because it starts off with if Grenfell Tower was a child, it would have been taken into care by.
Yes.
Which was my social work background.
Yes. I think Stairs of Shame appears, and I've just been reminded of it, but I think, in fact, I remember it appears actually as part of the GAG blog. Is that right?
Yeah, it was another. I think it either preceded this or followed this blog. And it actually had a photograph of the stairs and.
Yes.
Gave a bit more depth to what we were talking about.
We can look at that if we need to. Did anybody respond to this? Did anybody from the TMO respond to this message that you put up on the blog?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Did Mr. Dewis respond to the email that we've seen?
Not unless we've got evidence of a trail of response from him.
Did you ever get a meeting with the Chief Fire Officer at Kensington?
No, never did. I can't remember meeting him. And
right.
So I don't think so, no.
No. Now, before the break, we looked at the Grenfell Tower refurbishment newsletter from 2014 and the fire safety advice in it, and you helped us with that. It appears that there was no further regeneration newsletter sent to the residents with any fire safety advice in it until May 2016. Mm-hmm. So far as you can remember, were you yourself informed of any changes to access to the tower and the potential impact on fire safety?
No, we were not.
Were you told at any point that the AOV, which is what it stands for automatic opening vents, or the smoke extract system, was being repaired and would be out of action for a period?
We weren't. My only recollection, apart from, I think there's another incident a bit later on where I raised concerns about the fire alarm and the AOV, which I'm happy to talk about. But my concern about the AOV is that I actually used to walk past it on my landing, and at the bottom of it there were like 2 wires that didn't seem to be connected to anything. I think that might be in one of my statements.
It is, and we may come to that
Okay.
later. My question is a simpler one. Were
Sorry.
you ever told, either
No.
by the TMO or the LFB, that the AOV either was completely out of action or beyond economic repair or not working properly? Anything like that?
No.
Right. Now, we've seen again before the break that in the spring of 2014 and again July 2014, you raised with Ben Dewis of LFB your concerns about fire safety advice, the stay-put policy, and the absence of an assembly point.
Mm-hmm.
And you returned, I think, to this issue in 2016, didn't you?
Correct.
Can we look at the GAG blog for 20th of November 2016? TMO 00845987, please. And I think it will probably be familiar now to quite a lot of people in this room and beyond. I'll read the first paragraph just to remind everybody about this document. 20th of November 16. It is a truly terrifying thought, but the Grenfell Action Group firmly believe that only a catastrophic event will expose the ineptitude and incompetence of our landlord, the KCTMO, and bring an end to the dangerous living conditions and neglect of health and safety legislation that they inflict upon their tenants and leaseholders. We believe that the KCTMO are an evil, unprincipled mini-mafia who have no business to be charged with the responsibility of looking after the everyday management of a large-scale social housing estates, and that their sordid collusion with the RBKC Council is a recipe for a future major disaster. And then it goes on. If you then turn the page, that's how it starts, and then there's some history, previous Grenfell Action Group blogs, and then I'd like just to pick this up with you towards the end in the penultimate paragraph, where it says, in the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, and despite the terrifying power surge incident in 2013 and recent fire at Adair Tower, the residents of Grenfell Tower have received no proper fire safety instructions from the KCTMO. Residents were informed by a temporary notice stuck in the lift and one announcement in a recent regeneration newsletter that they should remain in their flats in the event of fire. There are not, and have never been, any instructions posted in the Grenfell Tower notice board or on individual floor as to how residents should act in the event of a fire. Anyone who witnessed the recent tower block fire at Shepherd's Court in nearby Shepherd's Bush will know that the advice to remain in our properties would have led to certain fatalities, and we are calling on our landlord to reconsider the advice that they have so badly circulated. The Grenfell, and I'd better read the last part, the Grenfell Action Group predict that it won't be long before the words of this blog come back to haunt the KCTMO management, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that those in authority know how long and how appallingly our landlord has ignored their responsibility to ensure the health and safety of their tenants and leaseholders. They can't say that they haven't been warned. Now, the section I've read out, the penultimate paragraph there, is this right? Could be read, perhaps was intended to be read, as you or GAG doubting whether the stay-put advice was appropriate for Grenfell Tower. Was that the case?
Correct.
When you wrote this blog, November 16, what did you think the right advice was? And I know you're not a fire safety professional, but what did you think that the right advice should have been?
So I don't know that we got that far with working out what the solution was. I mean, it was. I walked out of Shepherd's Bush Underground Station and I saw Shepherd's Court, and the thought that I had when I saw Shepherd's Court is, we're being advised to stay in our properties, but if that had been the advice and this fire had taken place, because about 6 flats above the fire point of origin had been like totally destroyed. So it was just like, and like I've explained to you before, we my concerns were around communal fires, gas explosions. So it just didn't feel that stay put was, it may have been in one circumstance the right advice, but in another circumstance it may not have been the right advice. And it's certainly, after seeing Shepherd's Court, didn't feel that stay put should just be the advice that we were given. I think.
Right. Now, the Post also, is this fair, also seems to be criticising the sufficiency of fire safety advice being provided to residents.
Correct, absolutely.
So you were criticising the TMO for not adequately displaying advice that you considered to be bad advice?
Well, I mean, it's a little perverse, but yes, I mean... what's interesting for me is that the fact that not post-fire, but pre-fire, and what we wrote on the blog was accurate. We didn't make things up to put on the blog. There was no need for us to make things up. Is that what we've written there about residents were informed by... go back a thing that the residents of Grenfell Tower have received no proper fire safety instructions from the KCTMO. Residents were informed of temporary notice. So, that was the fact at the time.
Yes.
And it's not a memory after the fire. It was like that at that time when we wrote that blog, that was the fact as it was.
Yes.
And that's, to me, that's really important, because it's not dealing with memories or like time gone by or maybe what you would want to remember. This is a fact. We didn't write anything on the blog that wasn't like factually accurate as far as we could ascertain.
Did you, and I know that you tell us that the blog was a means of communicating directly with the TMO
Definitely.
rather than writing to them or using their processes, but did you actually speak to anybody at the TMO, or did they try to speak to you about your concerns regarding the lack of proper fire safety advice to residents, whether it was the right advice or whether it was properly displayed?
So they didn't communicate with. I don't remember them communicating with us. But what I do remember is shortly after this blog, they put up the stay put signs by the lift. So it's I'm not sure whether the LFB were doing other stuff in the background, but it felt like to us that to get things done, we could blog, we could make a point, and then action was taken. If we weren't blogging about it, nothing was going to get done about it.
Were you aware that at the time Councillor Blakeman, Judith Blakeman, had forwarded your blog to the TMO asking them to address the concerns in it, that there were no proper fire safety instructions displayed for residents?
Was I aware she'd done that?
Yes.
If I'm really honest, I can't remember.
Right. Did you discuss your concerns that you've expressed here about fire safety notices with Councillor Blakeman, either before?
So yeah, I think it's included in our matrix. I hate to keep going back to the matrix, but it was quite a useful tool in that we were able to put our concerns into a place that is a surviving document. So yes, I mean fire and the changing of the numbers of the floors. So yes,
that's certainly in the matrix for May 16.
But I think also information is in there. I could be wrong.
Yes, we can certainly look at that.
Right. Okay.
But my question was really more specific around this time. Did you take this particular concern at this time to Judith Blakeman yourself, as well as blogging about it?
So my memory of this blog is that it wasn't particularly something that we were using to then hawk around to try and get action done. This was more of a kind of conclusion after a long time of how the KCTMO operated. I think going back to the beginning. And I think what's quite interesting about this is it's like wider from our own individual concerns about fire safety affecting Grenfell Tower. We've now, after a few years of studying the KCTMO, we've come to understand how deficient it was, and this blog is a product of that understanding. And look at it; it says it all.
And is the time? I mean, we can see it, and you've referred higher up, page 2, to the Adef Tower fire in October 2015, and as we've seen, the Shepherd Court fire in August 2016. Was the timing of this blog related to those two incidents? Let me put the question a slightly different way. We'd had the Adair Tower fire in October 2015, so a year before. and we'd had the Shepherd's Court fire in August 16, so 3 or so months before. What had prompted you to write this blog in late November 16,
Okay.
as opposed to any other time?
So I think the enforcement order was like a year enforcement order, and I'd been checking to see whether they had completed their enforcement order within the year, and they hadn't completed the enforcement order within the year. And I think there's an email to Ben Dewis I write a bit later on, confirming that the fire brigade and TMO, the LFB were monitoring this enforcement order. So I think the reason this blog, I mean, it kind of wrote itself anyway, but the reason it got written around this time, and there is a reference to the enforcement order, is because it was coming to the point in time where the Adair Tower enforcement order was meant to have been completed.
That was the 31st of October, I think. So that notice, I think it was a deficiency notice,
Yeah.
was the end of October 15.
So and this date is
20th of November 16.
so would tally with what I'm saying.
I see. Okay. But they're connected. Whether they're accurately connected or not is perhaps not a question. In your mind, were they connected?
So was this blog connected to the Adair?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And a wider understanding about fire safety, lack of fire safety, lack of control throughout the estates, rather than just in Grenfell Tower and on Lancaster West.
Now, can I move to a topic in relation to which you had some personal experience? Flat front doors.
Yeah.
Can I take you to your first statement, please? Page 15, paragraph 47. You say there, on my own door, there was a problem with the Perco self-closing device. The Perco was halfway up the door on the right-hand side. It was long, 3 inches into the wall. It looked like a chain, and when you let go of the door, it was supposed to ensure the door closed on its own. However, the Perco on my door just came out one day, not long after the door was fitted, so I was unable to close the door. I removed the Perco so I could close the door, and it was still off on the night of the fire. I did not have the Perco for years. Did you report the fact that your Perco was broken to the TMO at any
I
stage?
can't remember whether I did or didn't.
Right. Now, let's look at RBK 30's 53524, please. And I'm going to this, Mr. Daffarn, to see if we can get a time fix on this. This is a record of repairs, and I think we have to go to the native version. RBK 30's 53524. Thank you. Yes, there it is. Now, if we go to row 3705, there's an entry for the 12th of September 2011. As you can see, it's dated 12th September 2011. And if you scroll across all the way to the far side, it says under repair description, OOH, and then there's a number, front door will not secure. Did you report that your front door would not secure to the out of hours line in September 2011, do you think?
So that's kind of like a different problem to the problem I had with the Perco.
Right.
The problem I had with the Perco was I couldn't close the door, and I resolved it. I resolved it there and then myself, because it was a Saturday morning. I was going out of my flat, and I had to, in order to get out of my flat, I had to take the Perco out. This may have been another issue with not the lock or something.
I see. So it's a different incident. you think?
Yeah, and then I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, is that about the door on 136? But it's not, because it's 2011.
Right.
So there's a lot-
No, absolutely. That's a different issue. No, that's a separate. We're going to come to
Okay,
that
okay.
very shortly. But just on this one, I'm just wondering whether this is an incident relating to your Perco on your flat, but not. I think you say it's something else. Did anybody from the TMO or even the fire risk assessor ever tell you of the importance to fire safety of the Perco or a self-closing device of another brand on the front door of your flat?
No, I mean, I knew what Percos were there for, to close doors in the event of thing, but no one explained that to me. And
Did no one ever told you that it was essential to the fire safety of all the residents in the building that your Perco remained in good working order?
no.
Did anybody ask to inspect your front door and your self-closing device in particular while you were living in Grenfell Tower at any stage?
No.
Now, can we go to your second witness statement, please? Page 110, paragraph 333. You raise a query there. You say, I query whether these flat front doors were suitable for Grenfell Tower because so many people had problems with the self-closing devices, which appeared to be because they were fitted into concrete. Before the fire in June 2017, how many people did you know personally with problems with their self-closing devices?
Okay, it's quite hard for me to remember specific people. I remember it was a concern for people, and I think there was one individual I heard in particular whose door had actually fallen, the whole thing had fallen off. So that Raymond Moses, who lived. So yeah, I mean, it was more like a conversational thing rather than me going around and actually recording who had got a problem with their doors and not. But I mean, I think a lot of people had problem.
I mean, you say so many people. You give the impression here that this was a widespread problem, and I'm just trying to get a feel for your experience, how widespread it was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm able to give you an actual figure because I don't think we took a survey of it or whatever. But what I understand is it was like a widespread problem for people because the door. I mean, so something that we might talk about when we talk to people is the quality of the doors and, just in kind of conversation. And it always felt to me that the doors were a little bit of an issue in Grenfell, that I wasn't entirely sure that the motivation for changing them had been fire safety. I'd kind of suspected that there'd been another motivation, and that sort of made me think that they weren't really appropriate doors for where they'd been fitted into. And then the fact that I was hearing that other people's Percos were breaking, door locks, the actual, so not the Perco, but the actual lock itself would become loose. I mean, there were people that were complaining about their doors, and then hearing about more kind of, catastrophic instances to doors.
When you say you thought there might have been another motivation for changing the flat front doors, what was that?
Well, this is just like my own private thought. I didn't think the TMO were particularly motivated to do anything for our health and safety. So when they came and said that they'd done something for our health and safety, it just didn't really ring true with me.
Right. Why else would they change the flat front doors? Is there another reason you?
There's a lot of lucrative contracts in social housing.
I see. All right. Did you report to the TMO issue was a widespread one in the building?
I'm not sure that I did, no.
Right. Why is that?
For the same answers I've given you previously, I didn't see it as my responsibility particularly to do that. I may not have understood the significance of the Percos, and when I reported the 136 door, it wasn't for fire safety issues, it was for another issue. So
let's look at that, because in both statements you refer to your complaint about your next door neighbour's flat 136,
correct,
having been left open. Can we look at the email exchange on this at IWS 402220?
I have to say this was an extremely significant matter for me in my history with the tower and with the TMO. So I'd just like you to understand that.
Yes, I understand. Well, let's see how we go with this. If we start with page 1, second email down, this is your email to Mr. Peter Madison, who's been redacted out, but you can see that that's to whom it's addressed. Copied to Councillor Blakeman, Robert Black and John Sweeney. Dear Mr. Madison, I'm writing to you to lodge a formal complaint against the TMO concerning an incident that has occurred at Grenfell Tower on Friday night, August 14th, and has still not been resolved this Monday morning, 17th of August. Last week, my neighbours from, redacted out, Grenfell Tower vacated their property and returned their keys to the TMO. After the subsequent days, workmen from the TMO's contractor, Ryden, have entered the vacant property to carry out your so-called improvement works. When I went to leave my property on Friday evening, I was very surprised to find that the front door, entrance door to flat, blanked out, has been left wide open for the weekend. See photo. I have not entered the property, and from the outside there does not appear to be anyone inside, but I could not be sure. On brief inspection, the door appears to have a broken Perco and will not pull to. And you go on to say, in the next paragraph, that you could only assume that the damage had been done by Ryden contractors, who then couldn't be bothered to secure the property properly over the weekend. Please accept my apologies if I'm incorrect in this assertion. And then you go on to say that you called the TMO's worker, the out-of-hours worker, Phil, to report it. And you explain there, over the page 2, the response, second paragraph, or 3 lines in to what looks like the first paragraph, you say, Phil then told me that I should go and pull the door closed if I was worried. I asked her again for the TMO to help secure the door, but she refused and told me that if I wanted anything to happen, then I would have to call the police. I asked her to call the police, but she refused and told me it was my responsibility to call the police, as I had the details. I then reminded her that I'd just given her all the details, but she still refused to do anything to help resolve the situation. And then you express your upset about how unhelpful the out-of-hours worker was. And then you go on to say, in the third line, as it stands, the front door has remained unrepaired and open over the weekend and will have acted as a potential magnet to people looking to use the vacant property for illegal or antisocial purposes. This is not acceptable and feels very threatening to residents and demonstrates very unprofessional conduct by the TMO/Ryden. Please can you confirm that this email will be responded to as a formal complaint and answer the following questions for me. Please can the TMO explain why our contractor went away for the weekend, leaving the front door to flat, redacted, wide open and unsecured. Please can you confirm that the front door will be closed out of workmen's hours. Please can you also explain why your staff at the TMO were so unhelpful and rude and refused to take any action to respond to my legitimate complaint. And you say you've copied the email to your local MP and councillor so that they're aware of how the TMO continues to abuse the residents in Grenfell Tower. Now, the nub of it, is this right, is the broken Perco, the fact that it was left unrepaired.
You mean in general, or what happened on that evening?
Well, it's a long email, but the nub of your complaint is, here is a Perco, it's broken.
No, nub of my complaint was doors left open, I can't pull it closed, and you shouldn't be leaving the door open over the weekend.
Yes.
They shouldn't have gone.
All right. Okay. I perhaps didn't ask the question in perhaps the way I should have done, but that's the basis, that's the effect of your complaint. The Perco seems to have been the centre of it. My question is, how did you know that the Perco was broken?
Well, like I say, I carried out a superficial inspection. I went out, the door was open. I saw a couple of white hard hats on the floor. So this is I'm thinking that there's either the builders are there or they've gone. Probably knocked on the door to check that no one was in. And then, it's a weekend, I better close the door. Tried pulling the door, the handle was on the right-hand side, tried pulling the door closed, couldn't pull the door closed. The blockage must have been coming from where the Perco was. And that was it. I couldn't close the door. The door was left open over the weekend, and that's where I complained to the TMO. I actually took a photograph of the door, but it didn't contain the Perco in it. So
no, I'm sorry to be picky about this. I just want to get to exactly what it was you observed. So you couldn't pull the door to
Yeah.
because, is this right, you could perceive a problem with the Perco?
Well,
What was that?
the barrier to pulling the door to was at some point it wouldn't pull to.
I see.
So I'm not completely illiterate of construction.
No.
So I sort of looked and saw that it wasn't anything else around the door stopping it being pulled to, so I assumed it was a Perco.
I see. So is it right that the Perco not only was not closing the door automatically, but was actually obstructing the door from being closed at all?
That's what I was saying.
Right.
Sorry.
And how sure are you, to the best of your recollection sitting here today, that the Perco was broken and having those two effects you've just described?
Okay. So today, I have to admit, it would be very difficult to remember what happened that time ago. But if I've written Perco in this complaint, then I was pretty damn sure it was a Perco at that time.
Now, as far as you were aware, was the door closer to this flat, and there's no secret, it's flat 136, as you say in your statement, inspected and repaired after the date on which you made this complaint?
So it was repaired, but not until I'd been told by Peter Madison that the door wasn't broken and I could just have pulled it closed. Which was, and I sit here under oath telling you that was a lie, and it was how they treated me at that point, was just sort of lie to me, make out that I was vexatious complainant, and yeah, and I went out, the door was open, I tried to pull it closed, it wouldn't pull closed, I made a complaint about it. The complaint is responded to by Peter Madison telling me that I'm a liar and I could have pulled the door to, and I'm not a liar and I couldn't pull the door to.
To the best of your knowledge, did Peter Madison personally come and see the thing you had seen?
I don't. I think I received a complaint response from Claire Williams saying that she was aware that there was an issue. I need to be a bit careful because I'm not sure if that email was to me and at the time, but I believe that Claire Williams. I think Claire Williams picked it up and then emailed me to say they were aware there is a problem with door 136. And Peter's away on holiday, and it will be picked up with when he gets back from holiday. That's my understanding of what happened.
Yes, and we will be looking at those, perhaps with other witnesses. What I'm just really seeking to get from you, Mr. Daffarn, is how sure you are in your observations as recorded at the time. And I think you've already given me that.
I think I have, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I then turn to a completely different topic, which is the refurbishment?
Yeah.
And I want to start going back, if I may, to 2012 and the subject of consultation.
Yeah.
Can we go, please, to TMO 1001401? Now, this is a document published by RBKC and the TMO, called an engagement statement dated August 2012.
Yeah.
You're nodding. Are you familiar with it?
I have seen. Yes, I have seen
Yes.
it. I can't. I've seen it. I think. I don't know if I saw it before the fire, but I've definitely seen it after.
Okay. Now, can we go, please, to page 14? And on page 14, we can see the heading, Grenfell Tower Regeneration Project, and there are columns.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at, if you look down the left-hand side, you can see 28th of February 2012, there was a road show, and then on two down from that, 29th of May 2012, another road show, and lots of other events, including evening consultations, which continue all the way, if one goes over the page, to August 2012. One can scroll down all the way to 18th of August 2012. And this is a document dated August 2012, so it's a history or chronology of the consultation events thus far. And it runs pretty much weekly, it appears. And you can see the topic of the discussion with design proposals, relocation, design proposals. And then 16th of August, the pre-penultimate entry is an evening pre-planning presentation, daytime drop-in sessions, conclusion to consultation process and proposed planning application submission. And then positive response from residents who attended presentation. This is the right-hand side. Some residents wanted to know more about provision for new bike racks, etc. Did you attend either of the road shows that I showed you on page 14 in February or May 2012?
Can we go back to
Yes,
that?
please
those
go back
dates?
to page 14.
So I can tell you which of these I did attend.
Well, that would be helpful. Yes.
Okay, so the 28th February was as far as I'm aware, a kind of generic TMO roadshow that they did periodically, and they'd come to Lancaster Green. And my understanding of that is that no one from Grenfell Tower had been told that there was going to be a consultation about Grenfell at that roadshow, and that the questionnaire that they TMO claimed that they did at that roadshow was filled out by people from around the estate rather than people from Grenfell Tower. So it was kind of just seemed to me quite a strange way to launch a Grenfell Tower regeneration consultation by talking to people that didn't live there. The estate meeting is where Mark comes to the EMB room and says, how do we consult? What's the best way? The roadshow is a further meeting at the EMB rooms with a small select group of residents.
Were you there?
I was at the 29th for the 5th meeting. I was there.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know if there are minutes of those meetings, or I think for that meeting there may be minutes and an attendance list. And I think there were 7 Grenfell Tower residents there. Betty, who was here yesterday, was there.
Right.
And that, I think Bruce Soons was there, and I think it was a kind of like, these at the very beginning are like, kind of we're thinking of coming to do some work to Grenfell Tower. It's cladding windows. It wasn't detailed stuff at all. And then how I remember it progressing is a series of consultation events in the EMB rooms, which is down the bottom of the tower. And I attended probably, so there are like 4 or 5 of those, and I don't know how many I attended, but I attended a couple of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember being shown any samples of cladding options at those meetings?
So I never ever saw a sample of cladding at any point, and I later on, after having been promised to be shown samples of cladding and the windows, wrote some emails to I think Nick Paget-Brown from the leader of the council to say we hadn't been shown what we'd been told we were going to be shown.
Right. Can we go to TMO 1001401 and go to page 34? This document includes a newsletter dated 15th July 2012. So this is after the February and May roadshows and the estate meeting. And it's headed Grenfell Tower Regeneration Project, as you can see. And there's the background set out in the left-hand column. And you can see feedback from residents. I should just have pointed out the date. 15th July 2012 is on the right-hand side, as you can see there. In the first column in the middle, under the rubric feedback from residents, there's some bold writing, what you have said, and it says you wish to be involved in the development of the proposals for Grenfell Tower. Presumably that was true.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the 15th of July, so these feedbacks have come from the meetings with residents, not really from Grenfell Tower, but from the estate.
Right.
So they're not really the residents of the tower, they're people who lived on Lankwest Estate. So I don't dispute. So you want to be, we wanted to be involved. You're in support of the proposals.
Right. The reason I ask is that if you go to the second paragraph down in that column, it says there was a roadshow and then followed up with the issue of a questionnaire to Grenfell Tower residents. So the reason I ask the question is it right to say that the Grenfell Tower residents wish to be involved in the development of the proposals for Grenfell Tower?
So I never received, I don't remember ever receiving the first questionnaire that they put around. And I think they said they were going to do some door knocking, and I don't remember them ever doing some door knocking. Sorry.
No, that's right. Did you ever receive this newsletter?
I think I probably did, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you read it?
Yeah, I would have read it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's look at the second page of this one, at page 35. We can see that there is a call at the bottom to residents, and it says, "We need your feedback."
Mm-hmm.
And above that it says, "We would welcome your input and ideas for the proposals and encourage you to come along to our evening meetings where you can view the proposals. This will be a good opportunity for you to meet with the project team to discuss the scheme or your concerns in greater detail." And then it says, "We need your feedback on external cladding, window designs, heating and hot water system, external canopy and surrounding areas."
Yeah.
Did you provide feedback on any of these proposals?
Did I myself?
Yes.
So I did, yeah, along with others. So 15th of July this is, and I think that this is not a good, I'm not trying to be thing, but July and August is like a lot of people were not around. It was the school holidays. I think at the one of the first meetings, it was only myself and maybe Tanya Dalkle, another resident from the tower, who was at the drop-in. And then what they used to do is they used to kind of stick a note up in the lift giving you like 4 or 5 days notice before the meetings, like we had nothing better to do with our time than attend their meetings. And it's actually, this is a little bit better because you can see that this is issued on the 15th and they're advertising events kind of, I think, starting from the 19th or whatever. So there was a paucity of attendance from residents because of notice and because of the fact that it was being done in summer holiday times. And then the nature of the consultation was, so the cladding was barely, I don't really remember cladding at any of the meetings that I was at discussed in any depth at all. I do remember there was some posters that they had. I remember because one of the posters fell off the wall, and I was thinking, if they can't stick a poster on the wall, how the hell are they going to do Grenfell Tower? So that was kind of like a little bit of a thing. So that they had some examples of cladding, some examples of windows, some examples of heating system. But for the kind of the way the consultation was, it was like, it was what was concerning us. It wasn't really what they wanted to tell us. It was like, so for us, it was about our ability to clean the windows because we hadn't been able to clean the windows. Some people wanted to make sure that they could keep their windows open because if they was going to put cladding on the outside of the building, which was already a very warm building, to make it even hotter, and then we wanted to make sure that we could open our windows so we had some ventilation. And then there was like a bit of a problem with stuff falling out of windows, so there was concern that they might just like lock us in the tower with added cladding. So that was kind of like one of the major issues. Another major issue was the so around the base of the tower there was a kind of like canopy, that's it, external canopy, and everyone in the tower was really, really keen that we keep the canopy there because, you know, it was possible for things accidentally to fall out the window. It was possible for things to not accidentally fall out the window, which was a big problem. And we wanted to have a canopy around the base. The heating was a major problem. So those were kind of the three things that people, and then keeping the boxing club and keeping the nursery. People were very keen that they remained where they were. So it was kind of like, that's what was coming from us. That was what was coming from the residents that were at the meetings that I was at.
Right. Okay. Now, can we look at cladding particularly? It said, "We need your feedback on external cladding." What did you think when you saw that you were being asked to tell the TMO?
So I was pretty engaged with this process, but I didn't have, and I'm not sure that anyone else really did have any. I mean, I can't speak for meetings I wasn't at, or, you know, but we was like, the concern was about those issues that I've told you about, yes, rather than something that we had that was kind of like coming down the track. It was like, so, you know, I don't remember like a portion of any of the meetings that I attended being an in-depth description of cladding, its function, different types of cladding, different implications of having different types of cladding, and my understanding is that which was told to me by Councillor Blakeman further along that the cladding had always been chosen by the planning department anyway. So
At this time, this is July, August 12, do you recall whether, as part of the feedback process, anybody from the residents had raised a question or concern about fire safety or the fire safety implications of the refurbishment?
So, not in relation to, as far as I'm aware, because I wasn't aware that we had any conversation about the cladding, and I just said about, especially about, but I think if it was more the historic things that I've told you about already.
I see. Can we go to TMO 008480807 and go to page 5? Now, this is a document we looked at earlier together this morning, Mr. Daffarn. It's the EMB meeting of the 15th of May 2012, so a little bit earlier in the year, before this consultation document we've just seen, or regeneration newsletter we've just seen. And on page 5, you'll see that at the very top of the page, Bruce confirmed there is no damage to the tower, so we'll hold the cladding well. The cladding will give lots of insulation and heating loads will reduce. ED stated they do not want double glazing, they want soundproof glass. DS suggested triple glazing. Bruce stated that is worth considering. However, double glazing by nature is soundproofing. Was there any further discussion, either at this meeting or otherwise, with Studio E about the cladding? Do you remember?
About the cladding?
Yes.
At this meeting?
At this meeting or otherwise?
I don't remember cladding being discussed at any of the consultation meetings that I was at. There were these posters that they had, and then it appeared on the newsletter that we had chosen zinc. But I wasn't party to those discussions. It wasn't like we'd spend 20 minutes talking about windows, 20 minutes talking about heating, 20 minutes talking about cladding. It was residents coming with their concerns, putting their concerns across, and the meeting would end. And no one was concerned with the cladding, because it was kind of like I think there was something that came from the residents forum that people didn't want it to look like the academy, but the academy hadn't even been clad by then. So maybe it was more like there was a concern that it would look like Westfield, the shopping centre. People didn't want it to look like Westfield.
No. Can we go then forward in time, but not far, to June 2012? TMO 100376664, page 1. This is an email on the 15th of June 2012 from you to Siobhan Rumble at the TMO. Dear Siobhan, you say, please would you be kind enough to email me and let me know if you've had an opportunity to talk with Mark Anderson with regards when the residents will be given a chance to interact with the architects and be allowed to influence the designs for Grenfell Tower. Do you remember whether Siobhan Rumble replied to you?
I mean, if we haven't found the email, then I would assume that she hasn't replied.
We haven't been able to find one.
No.
You don't remember? No. Did you chase for one? Do you remember not getting a reply and chasing her for one?
So I think so. Siobhan directly, I don't remember, and there would have been evidence of it if I had.
Right. Did you speak to Mark Anderson about having input into the designs or being able to influence the designs for Grenfell Tower?
So I think consultation was a bit of a kind of running source. So if it wasn't Mark Anderson, it would have been Judith Blakeman. If it wasn't Judith Blakeman, as you see further on, I raised concerns with Claire Williams and Nicholas Paget-Brown.
Yeah, but did you speak to Mark Anderson, not having had a response from Siobhan Rumble? Did you speak to Mark Anderson about having input or influence over the designs?
If I'm really honest, I can't remember at that time whether I did or didn't.
When you said that you wanted, or we were asking about a chance to interact with the architects and be allowed to influence the designs for Grenfell Tower, what input into or design over the design? What input into or influence over the design did you have in mind for residents?
Well, I mean, so the issues that I've raised with you already about the canopy, about the heating, the windows, so to be able to influence those, and we we would. To me, the consultation wasn't about coming to consult with residents. It was about coming to tell the residents what you were getting, and that they'd learnt that from RBKC with the CALP project. That was exactly how we were treated when they did the CALP project. They don't do things with you; they just do things to you, and that's why at the very beginning it didn't sit right. It's like you shouldn't have to treat people. They would have learnt a lot from us had they included us. You know, they were our homes, it was our community, it was our residential amenity, and then we just had these people coming in and just doing these things to us, and it didn't sit right, and that's why we were writing these emails.
Well, I just wonder, Mr. Daffarn, whether that's really a fair criticism, or at least on the papers, because we can see from the Regeneration newsletter I've shown you that they were after your feedback.
They said they were.
So you say that was insincere, do you?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because the TMO were an insincere organisation, and I'm so sorry to have to say that, but you can't trust a single word written by the TMO. You can't trust the minutes written by the TMO. And these newsletters, to me, were just a way of progressing the project. So they'd have a meeting, then the next newsletter that would appear would contain what the TMO wanted to do, and it would be dressed up as consultation. And to me, that there's a form of resident participation called the ladder of participation, and it goes from the very top of being people participating to tokenism to non-participation, and we are at the bottom rung, manipulation, and this was what it was about. They just manipulated us and to get what they wanted in, and the process of consultation was manipulation in my mind, and the proof of it is they didn't listen to a single word we said. We didn't get a canopy. We didn't. Sorry.
Continue, please.
We didn't. We never. It never felt like a collaborative process. They took the canopy away, the thing that was most important to us. We weren't consulted about the windows that we got. We didn't see the windows that we got until they were installed in the show flat 3 years later, despite us being promised that we would see the windows. We never got to see the cladding, despite being promised that we would see the cladding. So
I thought that there was a mock-up for residents to view, which was set up at the foot of the tower in the June.
So that cladding was set up for the planning department to come and look at, not for the residents, and the residents never had an opportunity to comment on that cladding set up. And they didn't. It was set up for the planning department to come and look at. And I know that because I saw Jonathan Ball coming down to look at it.
Yes, I see. As early as July 2012, though, you say that the invitation to give feedback on the items we've seen was insincere and window dressing. I think that's what you're telling us. I never put words into your mouth, but I think that's the effect of what you're telling us. Did you raise with the EMB, on whose board you still were in July 2012, the fact that you regarded the TMO's and RBKC's invitation to give feedback as no more than insincere window dressing?
I can't remember if I did or whether I didn't. It's probably quite likely that I did, but as we go back to I think that we just got to establish that the EMB was not a force that could bring change. So the EMB would not be able to influence, wouldn't be able to hold the TMO to account and make so that it would be a different experience the next time we sat down in a consultation meeting. That the EMB never had that. Well, the whole time I was on the board, they never had that power.
Yes, I see.
I mean, I think, by writing, I wrote a number of emails complaining about the consultation process as a way of expressing that I didn't feel that we had been consulted with. I felt they were doing things to us rather than with us, and that's my evidence to you.
Let me just ask you then about specific point about the cladding. Can we go to your first witness statement at page 25? I want to show you paragraph 86. You say, I think it's actually, I'm sorry, I've given you a bad reference. It's page 23 at the bottom. Yes. That's right. You say the nature of the cladding installed on Grenfell Tower is a significant focus of the inquiry, and so I have searched for references to cladding in my emails. Having done so, and from memory, whilst I made some requests for information about the cladding, I was not provided with details as to what type of material was ultimately used, and I do not recall any proper consultation with residents about the cladding which was placed on the building. Of all the concerns I raised about fire safety, I was not aware that the cladding materials posed a risk. I was not told about the cost of the cladding and how that had been reduced over time. I was never told that zinc cladding was ultimately replaced with combustible aluminium composite panels with polyethylene inside. Now, just tracking through a little bit of history, before the 14th of June 2017, and indeed perhaps after, were you aware of zinc cladding having originally been proposed?
So I know, so it's difficult sometimes for me just to remember what I've seen after the fire and what I've seen before it, because I know that there is a newsletter where there is like this example of zinc cladding.
Yes, I'm going to show you that.
Right.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that. TMO 1001401. And I'd like to go to page 40 in that document. This is part of the engagement statement. And let's look at it a little bit more closely than we have the other parts of this document. It says on the left-hand side, in the oblong dark blue section, cladding system, various cladding options have been shown to residents, with the composite zinc cladding system being favoured by the majority. First of all, did you see this document at the time, do you think?
So this was included in a newsletter, or it looks like it's a newsletter?
Yes.
Okay.
I should just have shown you this, actually. It starts on page 38. You're quite right. Let me just show you. 38. So this is the next newsletter on from the one I showed you. This is 1st of August 2020.
Okay.
So it's right in the middle of the consultation process. And it appears bombarded with these things. And there's feedback from residents. And if you go to page 40, there you see cladding systems, various cladding options have been shown to residents, etc. Do you remember reading that in this newsletter or a newsletter like this at the time?
So if I'm completely honest, I can't remember whether I saw this then or I didn't.
All right.
I'm sorry.
It may make my next question but one self-answering. But do you remember, is it correct that various cladding options had been shown to residents, with the composite zinc cladding system being favoured by the majority? Is that factually correct?
So I would go back to my original evidence that I just gave you a few minutes ago, saying how the consultation took place, and there was never a run through of what different types of cladding was. There was some boards, but I don't remember there was this kind of engagement of, look, this is rain screen, this is what rain screen will do, this is zinc, this is the benefits of zinc, there's a higher fire safety performance with this. That never happened at none of the meetings that I was at. So I don't know how they came to this conclusion.
I see.
Sorry.
Coming to the question then, that I suspect you won't be able to answer, when you look at the middle of that page, just below the photograph of the building, you can see to the right of the green box, it says, VMZ Composite is a system made up of 2 sheets of zinc and a high-density mineral-rich core, combining the qualities of zinc with the rigidity and flatness of composite. And then to the right of that, you can see there's a little diagram which identifies as item 2, polyethylene core FR, fire retardancy. Right. Was that on your radar at the time?
It wasn't, and it's only become on my radar because of what's happened.
Okay. I think the answer is probably no, but let me ask it anyway. Did that register with you? Did this fact register with you, the fire retardancy of the polyethylene core of the zinc cladding, as something important to the residents at the time?
Well, my evidence to you is that we weren't involved in any detailed discussion about. There were no. I'm pretty my evidence is we were not provided with samples, so we weren't able to look at something and see that it had a filling in it, or so it'd be interesting to know how this got pushed forward, because I don't think it was the residents pushing it forward. Sorry.
Would it follow from what you just said about this that you were not aware at the time that there was a distinction, certainly so far as fire performance is concerned, between the two types of materials, a zinc cladding with a fire-resistant polyethylene core on the one hand, and aluminium composite material panels with an ordinary non-fire retardant core, polyethylene?
So my understanding about cladding at that time was like virtually zero.
Now, in the light of that, in late 2013, so moving on about 16 months from this, and at any time during 2014, did anybody ask you or any other residents, to your knowledge, for your views about changing from zinc cladding to aluminium?
No.
And it would follow that nobody sought your views about whether there should be a change from cladding with an FR core to cladding without?
No one asked us that.
Now, I appreciate that hindsight might make answering my next question a little bit difficult. But if you went back to 2012, now, how do you think that resident consultation could have had an impact on the fire safety of the materials chosen for the external rain screen at Grenfell?
How could it have done?
Yes.
Well, if we'd been provided with proper, informed information, and more residents have been involved, rather than just giving a few days' notice, them talking about, I only really come to sort of understand about cladding, and I saw the fires in like Dubai or whatever, but even then I didn't sort of connect that with what could happen to our bit. It was like I didn't get the connection. And I think, I don't know if we're going to talk about my freedom of information request to attend the monthly meetings, because I think that would have allowed us to get the information that we wanted.
Right.
Sorry.
The Dubai fires, I think, are 2015, aren't they?
Okay. But so for me, there was not really a connection between what they were doing to the outside of our building and fire safety. And even after the Dubai fire, I didn't really make that connection.
No.
So that, I guess that just demonstrates the kind of lack of knowledge that we had as residents around what was being put. Well, I can't speak for everyone, but what I had about.
No. But again, you're not a fire safety professional, so perhaps that's less surprising. But can I just ask you, going back to your point about the hot building? Mr. Anderson of the TMO, and I'm summarising his evidence, I hope not unfairly, when he gave evidence in Module 1 last year, said that one of the reasons that the TMO had considered overcladding the building was reports from residents that the thermal efficiency of the building was very poor. Was that something that you were concerned about, or you heard concerns expressed about? So
my understanding of that is that it was more like based with the leaseholders who were paying extremely high service charges for the loss of stuff like their fuel.
Right.
And that concern mainly came from them, that they were being charged this extortionate amount of money, and they couldn't understand how this fuel was, how the service charges were so high. So I might not have explained that very well.
You've opened up an issue which I don't think.
That would be Shah Ahmed and Tunde and Mark. Sorry.
But in relation to thermal efficiency and the connection with that, I'm not sure I understand. Let me put the question a slightly different way. To your knowledge, was the thermal efficiency of the building a widespread concern of residents throughout the building?
So I don't think so, because I think all of us found the building very hot, despite the fact that the windows were kind of out of date and needed replacing because there were gaps. So there was some fuel poverty between the windows, but the building still managed to retain its heat.
So did it remain warm in the winter and reasonably cool in the summer?
So we had heating. I don't think I ever turned my heating on almost the whole time I was there. And then during the summer, it would get hot, so we would have to open our windows. and that's why opening our windows was quite an important thing to do.
I asked the
Sorry.
question because I think one of the purposes of the over-cladding, at least the insulation aspect of the cladding, was to try and keep the building cooler in summer and warmer in winter. But you obviously didn't feel the cold in the winter.
Didn't feel the cold in the winter, no. It was always puzzled me, the reason that for the thermal efficiency of the building, I mean, we had like 2 inches of concrete or whatever it was. That didn't seem to be, I mean, fixing the windows would have helped properly, which they never even managed to do at the end.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Can I then ask you some questions about the Ryden tender review process?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, are we going to another topic?
Oh, and we are, Mr. Chairman, you're quite right.
Well, it just
Carried away.
seemed to me that if you're going to another topic, this could be a good point.
Yes, a good point.
Yes. I think it's time we had a bit of a break, Mr. Daffarn. So we'll take that now, and we'll come back, please, at 25 to 4.
Okay.
And again, please don't discuss your evidence with anyone when you're out of the room.
Okay.
All right?
You.
Thank you very much. Good. 25 to 4, please. Yes, would you ask Mr. Daffarn to come back in, please? All right, Mr. Daffarn,
Yes, thank you.
ready to carry on?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Daffarn, two things before I go back to my track. The first is a correction to what I put to you before. Can I ask you please to go to TMO 100-37666, please? I put to you, under a different reference, the email that you sent to Siobhan Rumble on the 15th of June. Do you see that as the second email down there about about having an opportunity to talk with Mark Anderson about influencing the designs for Grenfell Tower?
Yeah.
And I suggested to you, I think, that you'd had no response to that email from Siobhan Rumble. In fact, I was wrong about it.
Okay.
And if you look at the top, you can see that she does respond to you the same day. And says, "Good morning, Eddie. Mark emailed me yesterday to say he was busy but would call last night. I'm guessing he was still busy as he didn't call. I'm about 10 minutes from the hub, so we'll pop into his office and have a word with him if he's in." So that was the response. There was one. Do you remember whether that question was taken any further?
I can't remember, I'm sorry.
Right. The second thing I wanted to show you was the stairs of shame.
Yeah.
That's at IWS 402230. Just to put that into the record. It's part of the, well, it is a blog post put up on the 13th of August 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So only about a week before the one we were looking at before. And there's a photograph there. Are those the stairs of shame, as it were?
Indeed.
And there's a message in relation to that, because if you go to just give me a second to see if I can find it. Yes, it's in the third paragraph down on page 2. In addition, it says, residents are very upset that the TMO and Rydens believe that they can treat us like cattle and simply herd us around Lancaster West by closing off our rights of way without providing any alternative routes. At present, if you happen to be a mother with pushchairs and children, a community elder, disabled or infirm, and you cannot negotiate 4 flights of stairs pictured above, then the TMA believe they have the right to force us on a half-mile detour. We believe that this treatment of the vulnerable within our community is both illegal under disability legislation and is highly disrespectful and immoral. Now, just pausing there, I don't think this point is a point you took up directly with the TMO other than through this blog. Am I right?
I can't remember raising it in another forum.
Right. Did the TMO, after you published that, come back to you or Mr. O'Connor and take this point up with you, either by way of disagreement or by way of giving you reassurance?
I can answer for myself, no.
Right. Now, can we go back to where we were, which is the Ryden tender review process? Can I ask you to look at Claire Williams' first statement to the inquiry at TMO 00840364, please, page 8, paragraph 39. And she says there, residents were invited, in the second line, residents were invited to take part in the tender review process. So just pausing there, that happened in the first quarter, February, in fact, of 2014, just for your recollection. Residents were invited to take part in the tender review process. Nobody responded to the general requests for assistance and participation, And so I personally contacted a number of people to invite them to participate, and ultimately I persuaded 2 leaseholders, namely Pilly Burton, flat 165, now sadly deceased, and Mr. Barakat, flat 92, to provide a view on behalf of residents, and they assisted us when no one else came forward. They were involved with and looked at the part of the tender concerned with the residents' consultation process and the participation with residents. Did Claire Williams invite you particularly to take part in the tender review process?
So can I just so the Pilly Burton and Mr. Baccarat was the PQQ?
Yes.
Is that which was in November 2013, 30th of November, is it?
Well, let me just focus on my question first, please. Were you, where she says residents were invited to take part in the tender review process, were you invited to take part?
So there's, it's kind of, I'm so sorry, but there's a bit of but there's a bit of a backstory to that. And the fact is that we were advocating at a meeting, I think in August, that residents should be included, and I think again in September, and then there was a final meeting in November. So I was part of the residents that were saying you need to include us in this process. But then when it came down to the 30th of what I thought was the 30th of November, I had a couple of things going on in my life that made it. My aunt had actually passed away just at that time, and I went to. That's when my aunt had her stroke around that time, and then I went to Australia on the 1st of December. So I wasn't able to partake in that process myself, but we had been advocating for people to take part in that process.
Are you referring to the public consultation meetings?
There were public consultation meetings for residents.
Yes.
So yeah, in 13 after the power surges, we waited a long time to meet with Ryden. So there was a meeting in June, August, and September.
Right. No, that's okay. I'm going to come to the consultation in just a moment.
Okay,
because I am going to cover, I think, that what you've just told us in a little bit more detail in a moment. Can I just get an answer to my question? Did Claire Williams invite you specifically to take part in the tender review process?
I don't remember her inviting me specifically.
Did anybody else at the TMO tell you that residents were being invited to participate in the tender review process, as she says in this statement?
The reason I pause is because of the problem that I have in my mind, and remember some of this was quite a long time ago, is that the disconnect that I have is I can't understand what happened between us advocating to be included and it going ahead without us.
Right.
And my evidence to you is that I don't know whether that was because we were excluded from that process or whether life just took over and I wasn't able to do it.
I follow.
I'm sorry for that.
No, I follow.
Sorry, just let me be clear about this. You can see what she says in line 3. She refers to general requests for assistance and participation. Now, do you recall any requests going out to tenants generally to take part in assessing?
I believe they put something in one of the newsletters asking for people to take part.
Right. But you either didn't want to or weren't able to respond to that, is that right?
So that's where yes.
Yeah. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Daffarn, let's just take this a little bit in stages, because we might be able to get to the bottom of it a bit better that way. Can I ask you first to go to another part of this witness statement, page 30, paragraph 170. And we can see what Ms. Williams says there. She says, whenever there were any public meetings involving Grenfell Tower, the meetings could become difficult with disruptive conduct from a small number of residents who took over and dominated the meetings with their comments, to the exclusion of other residents who complained to me about this. As a result, at the drop-in session on 12th December 2013, we undertook a survey on how people wanted to be consulted, which showed the majority of people did not want formal meetings. This was published to residents in the January 2014 newsletter. This meant that subsequent consultation was largely by drop-in sessions, newsletters, and on a one-to-one basis wherever or whenever that could be achieved. Mm-hmm. Now, do you agree that public meetings by the end of 2014 could become difficult with disruptive conduct from a small number of residents?
I would say that the meetings were difficult. Disruptive, I would say no. I would say that there were a number of residents that were prepared to, hold the people to account. And I don't think they were disruptive. I think they may have been challenging. They may have been slightly unpleasant for the TMO. But, they weren't... I wouldn't say they were disruptive. I would have said they were just... They may have been unpleasant for the TMO because they were being challenged about what they were doing. So...
Was one of those residents you?
Yeah.
Right.
Claire one of them was me.
Claire Williams told us... Sorry, I started my next question and you hadn't quite finished.
I said one of them was me.
One of them?
But I wouldn't use the word disruptive.
No.
I would use the word that we were prepared to challenge what was being told to us.
I understand. Now, Claire Williams said, when I asked her about that sentence on day 56, and for reference purposes, it's pages 50, 17 to 25, and 51, 1 to 6, that she said that you were one of those residents, and you agree, but you don't agree that you were disruptive. I understand your evidence. Was it your impression from being at those meetings that some residents felt unable to contribute because of the actions of other residents?
No, that is not my understanding. In fact, quite the opposite. I think that people would have felt more empowered to speak out because others were speaking out to them.
Were you aware of drop-in sessions at Grenfell Tower at this time, late 2013?
Are these coffee mornings or something different?
Drop-in sessions is what they've been called.
Not really. I mean, by now I kind of wasn't really engaging, and I was happier to write emails to them.
Yeah. Now, let me show you an email that Judith Blakeman sent on the 11th of December 2013. So the day before, the 12th of December 2013, drop-in session referred to by Miss Williams here. This is at RBK 403386. It's quite a long email, second one down, and it's addressed to Rockfielding Mellon, copy to Laura Johnson and Nicholas Paget Brown, Wednesday 11th December 2013 at 7:51. Dear Rock, thank you very much for the clarification. And she says, as a ward councillor, I can confirm that Mr. Daffarn does not represent the general opinion on the estate. Tunde does represent the views of the Grenfell Tower leaseholders on the issues of concern only to those leaseholders, and the lady who I suspect was Christine Richer is the chair of the Lancaster West Residents Association, so to an extent can claim to represent some local views. And then it goes on about the school. And then halfway down the email she says this: unfortunately, Mr. Daffarn continues to claim that he and his colleagues represent the estate. They speak very loudly indeed, and their views do influence people. I'm confused as to how many meetings with them have actually taken place. I was at the first one you held at the EMB rooms. You refer to a further one of which I'm also aware, but I'm told that there have been at least 2 meetings and possibly more with the leader. My personal view is that continuing to give these people so much access to put their views is unhelpful, as it gives them greater legitimacy, which they then use in discussions with residents. Mr. Daffarn keeps shouting that this is democracy, and any attempt to silence him is undemocratic. I would call it more bullying than democracy. They are also strenuously claiming that the council wishes to cleanse the estate socially by demolishing the finger blocks, and people do tend to believe this. At the moment, Mr. Daffarn something, but he has been so disruptive during the Grenfell Tower consultations that Peter Madison has suggested, and I have agreed, that we do not hold any more open meetings. Indeed, while complaining loudly at the delay in obtaining planning permission, Mr. Daffarn then sought to delay it further by submitting a couple of additional objections. The last open Grenfell Tower consultation was attended only by Mr. Daffarn and some leaseholders who, as I think you're aware, have a different set of access to grind. And then she goes on over the page. Positive side, number of productive drop-in sessions and also good responses when TMO staff knock on the doors of Grenfell Tower residents. This does seem now to be the preferred way forward. We have a drop-in tomorrow at an empty flat that has been set up to demonstrate how some of the improvements will work. The difficulty I encounter on the front line is that so much information becomes distorted in transmission that it becomes very difficult to counter it all. I'm sure this situation will continue for some time. At his last very aggressive face-to-face confrontation with me, after the last Grenfell Tower consultation, Mr. Daffarn said, "We will reform the Grenfell Action Group and we will fight." But when I asked him what they were going to fight, he became completely confused and moved away. Now, I've read that to you because, partly because the TMO have put it as as part of their opening submissions, and it's fair to them for me to put that to you and ask for your comments on it. This is obviously Ms. Blakeman's or Councillor Blakeman's observations. Is there anything in what I've read out to you with which you would agree? We put it that way round.
And not the main part of it, no.
Right. So you don't accept that you...
Sorry, if it could go back to the top.
Certainly go back to page 1, yes, of course.
So this is the email that was used by the TMO.
Yes.
In their own, right, to try and paint me as being irrelevant, aggressive and stupid.
Well, I'm not sure irrelevant or
well,
stupid.
Well, that's how it read to me.
Are the words that are used. I don't think that's fair. I've read it to you. My question is there anything in this with which you would agree? In the parts that I've read to you?
No.
Now, it certainly looks from this that drop-in sessions and then door knocks became preferred to consultation meetings. As a fact, is that what you observed?
Indeed, they told us they weren't going to meet publicly with us anymore because they preferred to meet one-to-one or whatever, and that decision had been taken by a survey, which I always kind of doubted. But
now, Claire Williams, as I've shown you, referred to a drop-in session the next day, the 12th of December 2013, when there was a survey on the preferred means of consultation. Did you attend that drop-in session, do you think?
I was away at the time of the...
You were in Australia, were you?
I was.
Right. Did you complete a survey about...
No, I was in Australia.
Could you not do it on... Did it not come to you by email?
No.
Right. Let's then look at perhaps how it's described. MET 30's 41714, please. This is the 16th of January 2014 Grenfell Tower Regeneration newsletter that Claire Williams refers to, and the date of that is on page 2. And if we look at the fourth paragraph down, after the reference to the drop-in session, she says, we also asked those who came away... Okay, I'm sorry, I'll start again. We also asked those who came about the way we consult residents. The majority said they preferred an individual letter posted to their letterbox, 60%, or alternatively emailed to them, 25%. Now, I don't think you received the consultation document itself. Did you receive this newsletter?
So what date? I got back from Australia, I think, on the 15th of January. So what date's this?
Right, the next day, as it turns out. If you go to page 2...
Then I always accept that the majority of newsletters I would have received. There's no reason why I shouldn't have done.
Did you read it?
Sorry, can we just go back to the
yes, of course.
main...
Absolutely. It starts off, dear residents, a happy new year to you all. From the TMO. You might have remembered that.
Right, so I may have read it.
Right. If you did read it, did you understand from it that there would now be no more public meetings on the subject of how consultation would happen or on the subject of the ride and tender?
So what I kind of like to say is that wouldn't have surprised me, really.
Right.
But I'm not sure I would have, just through that paragraph, have understood the significance of what they were saying.
Can we go to MAX 401498, please? This is another newsletter from July 2014 we looked at earlier, and I showed you the part about fire safety. Can I show you page 1 at the foot? Coffee mornings. Successful coffee mornings were held on 26th June and 10th July. Those who came told us they found it really helpful to have their questions answered. I think you told us earlier that you didn't go to.
No, I didn't go to the coffee mornings.
Why didn't you go to the coffee mornings?
Well, I may have been busy. And I mean, they were held at like 11 o'clock during a weekday. And then also, by then there was nothing really, I didn't really have anything to say in a one-to-one meeting with them.
Right. Did you attend any other drop-in sessions or meetings as advertised by the TMO at this time? At all during 2014?
Not that I can remember. Sorry, sometimes the chronology is a bit, with so much time and everything, and such a long period of time, it's a little bit hard to place everything, but no. I don't remember 14 being a time of meetings.
Right. Now, I want to get back to the subject of Grenfell Community Unite and the Grenfell Compact in the context of the refurbishment, which takes us to the early part of 2015, so the following year from this newsletter.
Right. Can I just say, Mr. Am I going to have a chance to sort of, because Judith Blakeman said some pretty, derogatory things about me there.
Yes.
So, I have included my relationship with Councillor Blakeman in my statement, and I think that people should read that statement and understand the relationship that I had with Councillor Blakeman and why she might want to write something like that about me, because I dispute what she wrote about me there.
Yes.
Which I think I'm entitled to do, because it's very derogatory. I had a very difficult relationship with Councillor Blakeman, but I was not aggressive towards her. We didn't get on with each other. She particularly took a dislike to me, a very vehement dislike to me, and I think that kind of coloured the way that she saw me and treated me, and I'm sorry about that. And we did have kind of periods where we got on better with each other, but that's my evidence to you.
Right. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Do you know, I don't really want to do it. It's kind of like dirty washing, and I don't really want to do it in public, but I just think it's important for me to say that, I had a very difficult relationship with not, in fact, surprisingly few of the characters. I mean, Simon Lawrence, I think I met once, and, so there were people saying like lots of things about me, but in fact they didn't really know me, or people don't need to understand the relationship that I was having with these people. I mean, Councillor Blakeman came up, part of the problem is that you'd raise an issue about what was happening in the community, and I felt that that would be a reason for them to sort of come after you personally, rather than understand that as citizens we have a right to raise concerns, and if you do raise concerns or challenge policy or challenge how you're being treated, that the default position shouldn't be to come after that person individually. And I experienced that not only with Councillor Blakeman, but I experienced it with Nick Paget-Brown, many members of the council, many council officers. And it's disappointing because, I'm a social worker and I understand that, you get all sorts in this world and you need to treat everyone fairly. And that didn't happen to me.
No.
So sorry about that.
Thank you for sharing that with us. One of the reasons I wanted to put the email to you was to give you a fair opportunity to say what you wanted to say.
I'm happy to leave it at that as well. I think my statement explains that there were periods when things were difficult, like in my relationship with some of these bodies, and, I certainly, there were difficult times, but we were going through a difficult thing, and there was a nasty thing happening to us. It was kind of a consequence of all of that. Okay.
I understand, and I'm grateful for your sharing that with us.
Okay, thank you.
Can I go back to the refurbishment 2015, Grenfell Community Unite and the Compact?
Right, sure.
If we can go to your second statement, please, at page 57. you identify at paragraph 151 some concerns that Grenfell Community Unite had about the refurbishment.
Yeah.
And you've listed them in 5 subparagraphs there. Cheap-looking materials and shoddy workmanship, windows, boxing in of pipework, bullying and harassment by workmen, including threats of legal action and unauthorised access to properties, lifts being used by workmen and lifts not working. Now, apart from concerns that you yourself raised individually, is it right that none of the concerns that Grenfell Community Unite group that we see here listed by you were related to specific fire safety concerns?
So I think a number were actually, and the placement of the HIU above the electrical appliances, which was something that David Collins was very keen to get resolved, and I think that the changing in the floor numbers was something that we raised as a concern, and I believe also the other issue that we've talked about previously about access to the tower through the stairs of shame was something that we raised as a compact.
I see. I see. Can we then move on? To Councillor Blakeman's second statement. MET 30 is 45751 at page 8, please. Now, this is her second witness statement. And she says at page 8, second paragraph down, following the refurbishment, I worked with 2 residents, Mr. Daffarn and Mr. Thompson, and together we drew up a matrix of outstanding problems. This was sent to the TMO and I requested regular updates. The matrix was a table highlighting some of the outstanding problems with a further column for the TMO and or Ryden to set out what actions they were taking to address the issues. Fire safety was an issue included in this matrix and the fact that the stairwell hadn't been included in the refurbishment. I produced as my exhibit JB5 copies of the matrix from August 2015 and May 2016. Now, I'm going to show you both of those. First, the August 15 version. MET 30 is 45762, please. And you can see the form in which the matrix is set out. There's the number column, there's the resident issue column, and then there's the response column, TMO, Ryden, response. Just looking at this, it runs to just over 2 pages, onto the 3rd page. Do you recall which parts you worked on?
Not specifically, no.
Right. And we can see item 23 at the bottom of page 2. Change floor numbers back to reflect current flat numbers and find an alternative numbering system for the 2 new floors.
Yeah.
That was an issue, I think, which you had raised,
yeah.
the compact had raised right from the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah.
From March 2015. And you can see the answer. Royal Mail requires the lower floors to be numbered so that the address is easily identifiable for the emergency services. In the case of any incident, floors have been renumbered and temporary signage fitted until the final version is available. Floor levels have been altered and it is not possible to revert to the old numbering. Were you satisfied with that response?
I was so unsatisfied with that response that I carried out a Freedom of Information request to RBKC to obtain the correspondence they had with the Royal Mail to find out whether what they were telling us was true or not.
And what did you discover?
I think the outcome of that is that it hadn't come from Royal Mail. That was mine.
If you go to the next version in May 16, that's at RBK 30466509. And again, it's in the same format, as you can see. And you can see the outstanding issues: front door, compensation, fire alarm and smoke vents, lifts, HIU, CCTV, etc. Again, do you remember which bits you worked on? And which?
We'll go back to the previous page.
Go back to page 1,
yeah,
please.
And then I think the fire alarm and smoke vents.
That was one of yours, was it?
Well, that's when the alarm went. Sorry, when the alarm went off and the vents went off. and no firefighters attended. And the first people to attend was like the heating engineer. And I thought that's a little bit strange that if you've got a fire alarm going off, the first person that attends isn't the fire brigade, it's a heating engineer. And that's why I raised that as an issue with Councillor Blakeman at her surgery. And then I believe that she put that into an email and made that into a complaint or question to Peter Madison.
Yes, in early 16, I think that was.
Yeah.
Now, and that's why it finds its way, I think, into this matrix.
Yeah.
How did you, in general terms, how did you and Willie Thompson go about identifying the outstanding problems listed in these two matrices?
So by then, we were part of the compact, so we would hold regular meetings. We had, whatever it was, 6 lead members, and we would invite people to come and tell us what their problems were. I think we did some door knocking around then as well, some sort of, just try and find out how people were feeling in the tower.
Can we then go to TMO 00846-193? This is an email from Councillor Blakeman to Peter Madison and Claire Williams on the 2nd of October 2015. It's quite long, and there are a number of issues in it. But we can see from the first line, the point of the email was to provide them with a list of issues raised with members of Grenfell Compact at a surgery meeting. And first of all, do you remember being at a surgery meeting with Councillor Blakeman and indeed Councillor Atkinson?
So I think the meeting was actually just with Councillor Atkinson, and I think that Councillor Atkinson then sent his concerns to Councillor Blakeman, and she then constructed this email from that information.
If you look at the foot of page 1, have that on the screen, item 7, it says they would like another independent inspection of the arrangements in the event of a fire.
Yeah.
Perhaps this might be better carried out at the end of the project, although I think they have concerns about what would happen during the works in the event of a fire, especially because of the floor numbering problem. This request should also receive further consideration. Who was it who requested an independent inspection of the arrangements in the event of a fire?
So I believe this is linked to the stairs of shame.
I see.
So that's, like a major issue that we've still got, is that people can't get into the building if there was a fire. And then separate to that, you have the floor numbering issues as well.
Right. Was there a reason why Grenfell Compact considered it necessary to have an independent inspection of the fire safety arrangements, given that there was a fire risk assessor retained by the TMO?
So, we were very, very keen to have an independent inspection of what had happened at Grenfell through the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee, and this may be some kind of legacy of that, of just feeling more confident if it was someone that wasn't attached to the council or the KCTMO.
Yes, you can see in this one there's a specific reference to the floor numbering problem.
Yeah.
Now we've seen reference to that in the matrix, so it had already been raised. In simple terms, what were the Grenfell Compact's concerns about a fire arising from the what you call the floor numbering problem?
Okay, so it was if you had a visitor to the flat, they would end up getting lost the whole time because the whole numbering system just didn't make any sense, and it would seem quite logical that if our friends who even had some familiarity with the building would get lost, then what would happen if the firefighters came, and how difficult it would be for them to make sense of what was going on. It was just such an illogical, great example of that someone that didn't know the building, didn't know the community, making a decision on our behalf that could have been sorted out in a completely different way, in a very simple way, just by renumbering the floors below. But they didn't live there. They didn't care about us. Didn't care about the impact that changing the numbers of the floor would have on you. So you've lived on the 13th floor for 20 years, or the 14th floor for all your life, and next thing you're living on the 17th floor. It's just for no reason. And so there was that kind of concern, but then that concern then transferred to how that might impact on people that didn't know the building and coming into the building. Sorry, that's long-winded.
Yeah. Now, turning to the topic of the refurbishment review, in your statement, you've set out the efforts you made to have Grenfell Community Unite granted recognition, and explained, and I'm summarising, that the TMO eventually granted Grenfell Compact recognition after Lady Borwick, Victoria Borwick, intervened in July 15.
Yeah.
And after that time, there was a meeting, I think, in December 2015 with Victoria Borwick. Did you attend that meeting, do you think?
I did, yes.
You did. Did you take the TMO attendance at the meeting as a positive commitment to working with the Grenfell Compact?
So it would have taken a lot more than just one meeting with our MP, with the TMO in the room, to kind of signal a change in culture within the TMO organisation. It was a step forward because they'd at least now agreed to meet with us, which they hadn't done. They hadn't allowed us to form a group that could meet with them.
Right.
So, sorry.
Right. I mean, there were other meetings as well. I think there was one in November and two in and one in December, as well as one in October, all of which I think the TMO had attended. So I think by the time you get to the end of 15, there had been 3 meetings at which Lady Borwick, TMO and the Grenfell Compact had all sat around the table.
Yeah.
By the end of 2015, did you not get the sense that you might be able now at least to be able to raise residents' collective concerns with the TMO and get somewhere?
So we were able to sit with the TMO, which hadn't, like I said, hadn't happened. But in fact, my experience is that once we'd formed as a compact, we were kind of treated even worse than we were before by the TMO, and we achieved even less. And then within a matter of months, the compact kind of, we just couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much. It was like, so we disbanded the compact.
Right, I was going to ask you, you say, in a nutshell actually, you were saying we were kind of treated even worse than you were before. In very brief terms, can you describe what you mean by that? How were you describe being treated worse? Right,
because how we were treated before and how we were treated then is like, not being listened to, not being respected, not having people understand that these were our homes and our community, having things done to us rather than with us. I mean, if a good organisation is front-facing, where they're looking towards their tenants to engage with them, to listen, the TMO had their back to us the whole way through this process, and that just became demoralising, and it just became, and that's kind of what led to the end of our efforts to deal with them, and then within too long we had the fire, and that was how it all ended.
Right. I was going to ask you to give me a specific example. Can you give me a specific, concrete example of being treated worse?
Okay, so I will do. So we'd been campaigning very, very hard for the HIU units to be placed where they'd originally told us that they were going to place them, and in fact, then they just, without any consultation, decided to place them in the hallways. And I know other witnesses have given evidence about that. That was like a major thing that happened to us. So people did not like that, and that's why 100 people came to our original meeting. But we were trying not just to have that victory of then having our own, that the people who'd resisted having their HI units placed where they wanted them. We were trying to get units that had been placed in the hallway for residents who didn't want them there moved, and we had absolutely no movement with the TMO about that. Just told it would be dealt with at the next meeting. They'll be carrying out a survey. If there's any money left, they might do it. So it's kind of like not been taken seriously. That's kind of another example of how things didn't change for us in any meaningful way.
In fact, I think it's right that in the end, the TMO did agree to move the HIU units when you met with Victoria Borwick and the TMO.
Only for people that hadn't had them installed already?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
But I think is what I'm putting to you correct, that in fact, once Victoria Borwick had got involved, the MP had actually got involved,
yeah,
then you saw some movement.
Well, also it took a campaign by about 40 residents putting signs on the outside of the door, not allowing riding into their flats. So there was a concerted effort to have that. That upset a lot of people. And in fact, it was probably the TMO's greatest mistake in their treatment of us, or in their ill treatment of us, to do that without consulting with people. Because most people, a lot of people just wanted to get on with their lives, not have this major hassle the whole time. But that was a step too far. And it caused a lot of upset, and a lot of, people didn't want that in their homes. Mm. But we still didn't manage to then get that for the people who had that installed. We didn't manage to get that changed. We were promised a survey by the TMO that was going to happen after the works. That never happened. There was lots of things. I mean,
Can I ask you to go to another document, IWS 402249? This is an email dated 3rd of January 2016 from you to Sasha Jevons at the TMO.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, "Dear Ms. Jevons, I hope you had a nice Christmas and New Year. Thank you for visiting my flat just prior to the holidays and for listening to some of my concerns regarding the relationship between residents on Lancaster West and the TMO. If you are really serious in your offer to sit down with members of the Grenfell Tower Residents Association in order to work together to improve these relationships, then I would be happy to speak to other lead representatives with the view of setting up a meeting early in the new year. However, to save everyone's time, please do not agree to meeting with us unless your motives are entirely genuine and you are willing to use your power within the TMO to instigate positive change for our community. I can assure you that most residents are totally fed up with the ill treatment and lack of meaningful resident involvement we're subjected to by the TMO, and would be willing to work to find an alternative way forward. I shall look forward to hearing from you in the near future. Regards, Edward Daffarn." Now, it appears from this that Sasha Jevons came to you and visited you at home in December 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
that was part of the TMO's door knocking. After we'd done our door knocking prior to the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee meeting.
See. So this wasn't a special visit?
No, she was visiting her and her team were visiting all the flats.
Right. Now, it appears from this that she offered to work with members of the Grenfell Compact to improve relationships. Is that actually correct? Did she offer to do that?
Do you know what? I think this is an example of us, the conciliatory nature of us as residents. I mean, this had come after like a lot of bad blood between the TMO and the residents, and yet we were still willing to sit down, wipe the slate clean, start a new relationship with them.
Yes. You see, I'm wondering, because we'd had 3 meetings, or you had 3 meetings with the TMO with Lady Borwick present in October, November and December 2015. Having got that far, do you know why Sasha Jevons felt she needed to make the offer that you record here, having had those meetings?
I'm not sure that she made the offer. I think that we had a conversation, and maybe I made the offer to her that would she be willing to sit down with us and see if we can find a better way forward.
Right. Okay.
And then it doesn't come across that in that email, but that's in fact, that is my memory of it, and that is my evidence to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did you think that the offer might not be genuine?
Because of everything that had gone on before.
Right.
So we needed, if I was going to go and talk to other lead representatives and say, Sasha Jevons has been in my flat, there's a chance that we can meet, and I wouldn't, I think we'd need some kind of concrete commitment from them that they weren't just going to be the normal TMO, that they were going to actually, try and change and do something more, resident facing.
Did you get a response to this message?
So I think that I think at this time, so this is 3rd of January, so this is like 3 days before the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee meeting, and I think that was a very difficult meeting for us.
That was your speech, which you say was stopped.
Well, it wasn't my speech. It was a speech I made on behalf of the. I'm sorry to.
I'm just trying to put.
But it was a speech that I made on behalf of the compact.
Yes.
So I think that we kind of decided as compact lead reps that maybe we need to just kind of leave things just be a little bit.
Let's just look at that, because I was going to come to that now. It's right to think that you addressed the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee about a petition that had been presented by Councillor Blakeman and Councillor Atkinson, signed by 51 households.
So the petition that Councillor Blakeman had presented enabled us to have a meeting at the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee.
Yes.
But there was another piece of information we took there, which was our own our own survey of residents.
Yes, and you summarise the key issues that you raised in your second statement. If we can just look at that at page 69. Paragraph 182. You say there, I prepared a speech to read to the PSC on behalf of the residents. Mm-hmm. I wanted to deliver our complaints to the council in a measured, coherent, cogent voice without being rushed. However, I wasn't even allowed to deliver the full speech, as Quentin Marshall cut me off about 2/3 of the way through because he said I was taking too long. The speech I was delivering was representing the views of a great number of residents who had endured years of hellish building works in and around our homes. One of our first residents' meetings, it involved around 120 residents. The petition we had circulated, which led to the HPSC meeting, was signed by over 50 households. However, we were told by Quentin Marshall that my speech, that only lasted a few minutes, was too long, and he tried to prevent me from finishing its delivery to HPSC. The minutes of the meeting are available on Relativity and record a summary of my speech, where, amongst other things, I raised A, lack of consultation and resident engagement, B, threats, harassment, lies and intimidation from the TMO, C, lack of response to legitimate complaints, D, poor workmanship and site management, E, the need for urgent scrutiny and an independent investigation, and F, the need for lessons to be learnt for any future works. Now, those issues are the same as those that you and David Collins then raised later that year, in April 2016, weren't they? And you came to those again.
So sorry, in April, when did we raise? So this was the scrutiny committee meeting in January?
Yes, sorry, April 2015. These are the same issues that, in fact, you had raised with the TMO initially, after the compact had been formed.
Right, okay,
in the April
fair enough.
of the previous year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nothing, in essence, as far as you were aware or you felt, had changed since then.
So, I think so. Most of the works have been completed by then. I don't know what could have changed between that then and. So, can we go back to the top? I'm on C here. We could go back to.
You want to go to the previous page?
Yeah, just so I can get a list of. So, lack of consultation and resident engagement. That was an ongoing historic issue. I don't think we'd felt that the threats, harassment, lies, intimidation from the TMO, whose survey we conducted, I think, in November. So I'm not sure we would have had that information for all the meetings with the TMO, and then we could go down to C.
You could turn the page, please, to page 70.
Lack of response to legit was an ongoing issue. Poor workmanship and site management, horrific. Need for urgent scrutiny and independent investigation, which was our whole thing, that we wanted someone not TMO to investigate themselves, and of course the TMO investigating themselves. And then the last one was the need for lessons to be learned from any future works, was what was called the Grenfell Pathway, which was something that David Collins and Judith Blakeman had worked on, which was a very useful document, or could have been a very useful document had it been adopted.
Did you have any fire safety concerns at this time of your speech?
So I'm not sure that fire safety concerns made it into that speech.
Right.
Okay.
Now, in general terms, did RBKC ever respond to the points that you made in that speech so far as you got to make it?
The RBKC responded to that speech by ensuring that our concerns listed in that speech were never investigated independently, but were investigated by the KCTMO. Laura Johnson ensured that happened, along with Robert Black, and I don't know what other collusion was going on inside the Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee meeting, what role Quentin Marshall had, Condon Simmons, a councillor called Condon Simmons. I mean, it was a very abusive evening in terms of going into the room and seeing Laura Johnson and Robert Black kind of just like laughing at us, really. And then you had the whole TMO chief exec sitting down. It was we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to get the right thing done, but with a power imbalance against us, it was just, we couldn't control these things. We were promised an independent investigation, a working group at that Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee. By the time we were out of the door, they changed it into something else. They changed it into it will happen if there's time, when all the other groups have finished. Well, actually, the TMO will do it. And the TMO ended up marking their own homework, giving Peter Madison top marks for doing an amazing project management job. And the truth of it was, we might not be sitting here if someone independent had actually come and seen what had gone on.
Some very short questions, finally, about gas pipes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll show you the document. IWS 50169, your exhibit, I think page 82. This is an email from you to Ben Dewis at the LFB dated 20th of March 2017. And you forwarded an email of the 7th of March below it. You can just see that. And in your email of the 20th of March, you say, "Dear Mr. Dewis, I'm requesting that the London Fire Brigade come and inspect the new gas pipework that has been installed in Grenfell Tower. The Vice Chair of the Grenfell Tower Leaseholders Association has made the following concerns public, and these health and safety fears are backed up by a number of tenants. We've also been informed that the National Grid will not be returning to Grenfell Tower to re-earth the power supply to newly installed meters. Please can you keep this correspondence private and confidential between ourselves, as I fear repercussions from my landlord if they discover the source of this complaint." Did you share the concerns raised by GTLA about the gas pipes?
I shared them. Sorry.
Did you yourself have?
Oh, sorry. Did I share those concerns?
Yes.
To a degree, yes. Yeah, to a degree.
Did the GTLA ask you to raise these concerns with the LFB?
No, I think I probably offered to do that. We work quite closely together, and I think, I was probably able to say to Tunde Shah or whoever, look, I've got this guy Ben Dewis's email address. I'll be very happy to forward that on to him. I don't think they felt that they were making the progress that they felt needed to be made, and I felt that I was able to help them by at least bringing Ben Dewis and the LFB into it.
Right. Now, you asked Ben Dewis to keep the information private and confidential because you feared repercussions from your landlord. From whom did you fear repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe by that stage I was just getting a bit worn down with the TMO and the kind of, what I would perceive as like kind of, victimisation if you put your head above the parapet. So, like I was explaining, from the hornet's nest kept themselves anonymous, and I felt, I don't know, maybe it was I didn't do that on much other correspondence, but I just felt that, I didn't expect them to come round and sort of, threaten me or anything, but I just felt that, I just didn't want I was just getting tired of sort of how I was being treated, really, by the end of it all, and that seemed like a way of keeping my name out of it.
Right.
But it wasn't like I'd made a conscious decision to do that on all correspondence. It happened to be in that correspondence.
Okay, thank you very much. I've come to the end of my prepared questions, bar one. I do have one question for you, but I'm going to ask it right at the very end, if I may do that. But, Mr. Chairman, it's probably a convenient moment to take the break to see if there are other questions. I think there are, looking at my...
Yes, well, would it be sensible this time to allow a little bit more time than we have been lately, say 4:45?
That would be very good.
Yeah.
If we need longer, which we might, I can always...
Well, then you can always let me know.
Yes, but I'm grateful to you. Thank you. I know it's 4:30, but that was
No, that's
very
all right.
good.
Well, Mr. Daffarn, we always have a break at this point after Council thinks he's got to the end of his questions, just to make sure that he has, and to give other people a chance to suggest questions that we might need to put to you. So we'll have a break now. We'll come back, if we may, at 4:45, and then we'll see if there are more questions that we need to ask you.
Okay.
All right, and the usual request, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence
course.
while you're out of the room.
Of course.
All right,
Okay. Thank you.
Would you go with the usher, please? Right, thank you. 4:45 then, please.
Right.
Yes, would you ask Mr. Daffarn to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Daffarn, well, we'll see if there are any more questions for you. Yes, Mr. Miller?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one or two. Can I start by asking you to look at TMO 00830724? This is the Grenfell Tower Regeneration newsletter from February 2016. And halfway down the page, you can see that it says progress. You will have noticed the following progress since Christmas, and then there is a list with the little arrows which are identified. And you can see the list of topics. And then if you go over the page to 16th February, drop-in for new billing system for heating. 22nd February, drop-in for new door entry system to New View Homes. I take it you didn't go to those drop-in sessions?
So they never actually managed to. I never let them into my flat to put the new billing system in for my heating.
Right.
So I didn't have to attend that meeting.
I see.
And
why didn't you let them into your flat?
to do one was a mixture of when they tried to come, when they wanted to arrange to come to my flat to do it, it wasn't convenient for me because I wasn't there. And then they didn't come back. So I was just left without the meter. I just had to pay my standard debit.
And if you look at the very foot of page 2, you can see that it says compact meeting. The next Grenfell Tower compact meeting will take place at 6:30 p.m. on 23rd February at the Lancaster West Community Rooms. And over the page 3, for anyone who is not sure what a compact is, put simply, it's an agreement between representatives of a block or estate and the TMO, which sets out how residents will be involved in decisions affecting their homes. This is an alternative to a residents' association as a means of influencing decision-making, but without the formalities that go with it. Did you realise well, first of all, did you see this newsletter when it came through your door, do you think?
I may, like I've always said, I may well have done, yes.
You could see from it that the TMO and Ryden, because it's a joint document, were advertising to everybody in the block the fact of the compact's existence and an explanation of what it was. Was that not something of assistance to you?
Well, I mean, we certainly were putting our own newsletters around the estate. I mean, it was a step forward, I guess, that they were mentioning that there was now a compact. I mean, we wanted to be a residents' association. We had to be a compact. So just reading that's a little bit upsetting in itself because we weren't allowed to be a residents' association. We had to call ourselves a compact. But if you're asking me, is this a sign of progress? And, I mean, it is a sign because previously we hadn't been allowed to form a group. The fact that they're putting it on their newsletter, I mean, yeah, whoopee.
Well, yes, I mean, you say whoopee. I mean, was it their idea to do that, or did you push for them to include the compact in the regeneration?
So I think what we'd have been pushing for would be for like a more openness that there was a compact and that we had to, it would be good if we could kind of work more jointly together. And if this was a sign of working more jointly together, then that would have been something that we would have promoted.
I see. As a result of this statement in this document in February 2016, do you recall whether more residents of the tower sought to join the compact?
I very much doubt it. I'm not sure how many other residents. I mean, I may have been a bit of, I would have read pretty much everything that came through the door. I'm not sure by this stage what other people were reading or whether it would have influenced them. We had quite a, quite a good. Well, I'll say it myself, but the compact produced a newsletter, and I don't think residents would have not known about us and their opportunity to be a part of what the compact was. We called ourselves the RA, but they would have known who we were. They would have known where to find us. And hopefully we were able to sort of represent people a bit better.
How many members were there of the Grenfell Compact?
So I, off the top of my head, I don't know. We had 6 or 7 lead, like lead representatives, they were called. But I don't know if we were required to sort of have a standing list of members. I'm not sure it worked that way. I could be wrong, so it might be well to check that. But I don't think we had to kind of go and say, will you be a member of the compact? I think we had our lead reps, and then that allowed us to be the compact. But you can see from our efforts to be democratic that we were inviting everyone to come to meetings, let their views be known. So I do think we did. I think, you know, like I've gone back to kind of the meeting that we had with Grenfell Community Unite, where, you know, we broke into groups, tried to facilitate this kind of information sharing, putting it into one place. So
I see. Can I then ask you to go to TMO 00831-726 at page 7? And I'm showing you this document in light of our discussion earlier about being shown the cladding. This is the July 2014 Grenfell Tower Regeneration newsletter. And you can see, as you rightly say at the very beginning, that the metal canopy around the block had been removed. And then you can see the photographs, and then underneath that it says, from the next month, the main temporary access will be the walkway from Latimer Road or the stairs from Grenfell Road. And then it says, we've now put up samples of the cladding panels for the council's planners to look at and approve. These panels overlook the walkway.
yeah.
Did you, or anybody else to your knowledge, use that opportunity to have a look at the sample or samples of the cladding panels yourself?
Look, I think that sentence there says it all. They were put there for the council's planners to look at. We couldn't avoid looking at them because they were stuck on the side of the building. But it doesn't say, you know, we would welcome the views of residents once they've had a look at the cladding. Because our views did not count. That was chosen by the planning. Councillor Blakeman told me that the windows and the cladding had been chosen by the RBKC planning department. So I kind of always knew it was a done deal, really.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Daffarn, those are my questions but for one, and I have a final question for you. If you could summarise, if you can, in a sentence, what was it that the TMO didn't do, or RBKC didn't do, that you say they should have done?
They didn't treat us with respect or humanity or empathy. And if they had done, we wouldn't be sitting here now. And I thank you for the work you're doing. But what's really, really important is that the culture of the KCTMO, the lack of scrutiny by RBKC is believed, I believe many residents believe, is a causative factor of what happened on the night of the fire and what led to the fire. And I just ask you that you bear that in mind.
Mr. Daffarn, thank you. Thank you very much for all of your answers, the whole of your evidence. We're extremely grateful to you, and it only remains for me to say thank you to you and to wish you well. Thank you.
And Mr. Daffarn, on behalf of the panel and myself, I think all three of us would like to thank you very much for coming to give your evidence today. We've all found it very interesting and very helpful to hear what you have to tell us. And I'm sorry to take a day out of your life, as it were, to come and give evidence,
welcome.
but we are very grateful. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Well, that's it then.
Okay, thank you.
So if you'd like to go with the usher, you can make your way home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Millett, that must be all we have time for today.
It is, Mr. Chairman, yes.
We have other witnesses coming tomorrow.
We do, and before the first of the oral witnesses starts, there is some further resident evidence to be read into the record, and I should be doing that.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll do that at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
10 o'clock, I'm most grateful, thank you.
Thank you. 10 o'clock tomorrow then, please.